Welcome to, well, it's Megaphonics 23, but actually we're in Autofarm at the moment. So at the really similar time that the Frank Cassidy episode was being shot, I came here to Autofarm and to have a look around there. I mean, the workshop's amazing, but the story about how Autofarm came to be, Mikey, who I'll introduce you to in a second, he's the director of this place, and he took, basically shut the workshop for me, or part of the workshop, for me to be able to shoot here. So you'll notice the difference between the actual episode and where we are now is I was basically here and it was a fully functioning workshop. What we have today is obviously they've cleaned it and made it look pretty nice, but actually this place builds some of the best air-cooled stuff you've ever seen. So I hope you really enjoy this episode. It was one of my favorites to shoot. Mikey and I get on like a house on fire, and you get some really true detail about the history of Autofarm, but actually the culture itself. So stay tuned. This is the Renngineering YouTube podcast, and I am Paul, your host. Welcome back to the Renngineering YouTube and podcast, and welcome to Mikey Wastie.
Hi.
Is that how you pronounce your last name? Wastie?
Yeah, Wastie.
It is Wastie.
Yeah, Wastie, yep.
Managing Director of Autofarm. Welcome to the channel.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, what a place. This is the third time I've been here. I think the first time was either the first or second Boxengasse event that was run. And I had a mooch round, and I was literally just starting Renngineering. I'd done no pieces to camera, and I collared a couple of your guys. There's one guy that was I think he was an apprentice, or he's in his first year or 2 years.
Yeah.
And I've watched the footage back, and I pinned him in the corner and asked him a ton of questions, and he was like, "Oh my god!"
Yeah.
But ever since like that kind of experience of walking around here and seeing what you guys do, from that day, and that was probably 3-4 years ago now, and then we've obviously had coronavirus in the meantime, but I've been itching to come back and learn about this place and learn about it. Absolutely itching, and so thank you for having me.
No problem. It's lovely. It's weird. It's like our front room. It's our living room.
It is. Yeah. This would be my living room, by the way. Ask my wife.
I could get away with this at home. This would definitely be my living room.
Yeah.
But no, I mean it's a stunning place, and the relocation of Autofarm from the old site to here at Boxengasse, has been fantastic. I mean, what Frank has. His vision of what he wanted to create,
and still creating,
and being in it and part of it has been phenomenal. Autofarm has always been quite a grainy business that it's never been polished on the outside. It's never been this white wall kind of business. We've had red brick in our last place, and it was on a farm, and we kind of wanted to keep that industrial feel.
Yeah.
And in the early days, talking with Frank, we were talking about how Autofarm was, and he was talking about his ideas, and it was like it's the same. There
were no clashes there. Generally it was all kind of on the same page.
Definitely, the whole. We mentioned the red brick. We want to try and keep the red brick, and it was like music to his ears. It's like, oh, cool, that's what I wanted, red brick. Because
he's all aesthetic, right? He everything has to. I was shooting with Frank. He won't mind me saying this, by the way, but. Seconds before I started recording, he was adjusting the magazines on this.
Yeah.
Literally, it's the tiniest detail with that guy.
Devil's in the detail. It really
Devil's
is.
in the detail. But let's start with, and I do all these, and I deep dive a little bit of the person's journey, right? So I think this is what fascinates me is the buildings and the cars and the businesses. They're really interesting, but somebody that is owning or running a business. There's a journey, there's normally a story behind how that happens. So if we start, as young as you want to go really, so where is your, I was chucked in the back of an NGB GT, and the only way I'd sleep is by sitting on the parcel shelf and going, that's how I go to sleep. What was that for you? Where did that start?
My dad wasn't in the motor industry at all, but he just had a massive passion for cars. So, if we weren't going to motor racing events, or we weren't cleaning his cars at the weekend, it was always a passion, a hobby, doing stuff and tinkering in the garage. And for me, I just loved doing things with my hands. So from a real early age, I got into a lot of trouble taking everything apart. If I had a new bike, it
with
was in
absolutely no
bits.
ability to put it back together.
No ability to put it back together. It was in bits everywhere.
Right.
And then slowly, Dad would come in and he'd be like, you know, your bike was in bits, and I've come back later and it's all back together and it's like working. That did migrate on to a few sore subjects where I decided to disassemble his car before we were going to like
What car was
events.
that? What sort of cars did you have back then?
He had an XR3i at the time.
Okay.
And we were big into the Fords.
Yeah. Which generation was that in the XR3?
So that would be the Mark III.
Yeah.
And it was just like they're going out, and I've taken bits off the engine, and he's come out and he's in.
You're trying to reject the car, but you've got no idea what you're doing,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So that's kind of where the hobby side of it started. But I never really had any aspiration to do that as a job.
Yeah.
I wanted to do something different, and you know, I'd looked at joining the military. I've got a background in air cadets.
Yeah.
Started there very young, and that gave me a really good footing for, you know, getting involved in activities and doing things like Duke of Edinburgh and just getting off.
Yeah.
You know,
just
getting off
being
on your own
up
feet
and doing stuff. Right? Yeah.
So that was one route I was considering going down. Architect is where I did my work experience. Architect's office, and absolutely loved it. But there was just always this niggling thing that, as much as I sort of enjoyed it, wasn't my passion. So I went and did an engineering course at Oxford full time.
Wow, okay.
And that was mechanical and electrical.
Right.
And just, brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant experience. And it was actually one of the lecturers came to me and he said, if you're making something that's got some automotive input in, he said, there's like this beam of light that you inject into it. He said, if it's got no automotive application, you give it just what you need to give it, but you don't bring anything more. And it kind of was a bit of a wake-up call.
Right. Yeah.
And at
that point, did you have a car that you were kind of a special car to you, or was it just like you're a student, so you got transport and that's?
I had transport. I mean, my first car was a white Polo Coupe S.
Nice. I mean,
and
I'm enthusiastic about that.
And that's actually a car I wish I still had.
Yeah.
Someone I know recently.
An ABF 16 valve in it, on throttle bodies. That'd be pretty cool. Yeah.
And I got to sit in one recently, and it smelled exactly the same.
Did it really?
Right.
Yeah.
It's phenomenal. But yeah, so that was a car I used to tinker around on, and that's what I was using to go to college in.
Okay.
I think I was spent more time repairing it than I did driving it, because you're a bit heavy-handed when you're younger and doing stuff you probably shouldn't. And but I learned a lot, and I think that was a point where I thought, right, I need to maybe try this as a career. And I went to do work experience at a local Vauxhall dealership.
Okay.
It's not like love working on cars, but I just felt I just couldn't do the same thing every day, like doing. The
it's very, and no disrespect to any mechanic in a sort of production environment. That's my background, albeit Lotus, so that's much nicer. But Chrysler and Jeep with the other products, and it's very churny. You just you do the same set of drop links and the same Crossfire or the same PT Cruiser, and who wants to work on a PT Cruiser? And then an Elise or an Exige come in, and then suddenly you can see everybody's like, okay, much happier now, much happier, because there's something to do, right? Rather than so Vauxhall didn't light your fire. I totally get that.
No, I mean, it was good. It was a good group of guys to work with, and it gave me good insight into one side of the industry. And I think at that particular time, cars were a lot less technical in the sense of electronics. So it was a place where I just wasn't sure I wanted to be. And actually, the college that I was going to at the time had a driver that worked for Autofarm.
Okay.
And he was a lecturer, or an ex-lecturer that had taken the driving job at Autofarm as like a retirement job. And that's how I got into Autofarm. So I had an interview with Josh, and I came to see this. I remember it was a hot sunny day. It was a dusty farm, and there was a 911T Rally, a 1968 car outside, which I had no appreciation for at the time.
Did you not?
The German brand was a bit alien to me, because I was kind of forward, and I just remember walking in thinking, that's cool. And somebody started it up, and it was this like raw, gritty, straight through megaphone
lumpy cams
car.
is the
And I thought, wow. And that's where it started.
Right, okay.
So I started as an apprentice with Josh. I worked in the service side, worked in projects, did some stuff in the office in parts. Yeah, just
what year was this? Roughly what?
This would have been 98.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And yeah, just worked through. Loved the project side. That's where I really focused in on, because I loved challenges. I liked, you would get something from Porsche and it wouldn't fit, or you'd take you'd take something from a 90s car, because we were doing a lot of, before the recreation thing really kicked off, we were doing a lot of like backdating.
Yeah.
And we were taking parts and trying to fit them to cars that they weren't designed to fit. And I've always had this mentality of, I want to do something the way Porsche would have done it themselves.
100%.
So
that's easier said than done, right? Especially when
massively hard.
Yeah.
And now, because technology's moved on, things are, like with 3D printing and how you can get something from like a drawing to manufacturers.
CAD, SolidWorks, there's all this stuff you can do now that it makes life so much easier.
Where at the start for us, it was a little bit more hands-on. You were trying to prove things the more agricultural way. But yeah, no, that's the side I've really enjoyed.
Yeah, so that's got you to the point where you're at the old premises.
And
that ran to, and you were on the tools working for how long? How long were you doing that for?
Oh God, it was probably 8 years ago that I started to phase out of the tools. I mean, there was a point where we were building project cars where I was, Josh was still running the business. I was building project cars. I was also estimating, invoicing. So there's a lot that I was trying to do. So there were long hours. But the reward for me was like building this car. And I remember some of the trips that the clients had got planned for the car. So there'd be a deadline to get a car done because they were going to Le Mans. And it's like the validation point of where they collect that car, and that vision that they had at the start is suddenly
realised. Yeah.
And you're looking for that. Have we done it? Have we done what they wanted? And when you get that kind of, oh wow, this is mega, or you get a text message as we were doing back then, or a WhatsApp now, like, of a picture where the car's, sitting on the ferry or something. You're like, we did that.
I did that. Yeah.
And that was really, that's the sense of enjoyment in it.
Definitely.
And
have you got a particular project in that kind of era? Have you got a project that stands out as the one that, like, actually two. Have you got one that, if I could go and redo it, there's things on that I probably would do differently now? I mean, sure, that's iterative. Technology's moved on, and is there one that you go, oh, I could have kept that myself. I loved it that much.
Oh yeah, there is so many cars that you wish you had kept or been involved in. I think in every customer car that you do, there is a proportion of them in the car and a proportion of you in the car, and there's always constraints which you might look at something and think, I probably wouldn't do it maybe that way. So every project you will look at it and go, if I was doing it for me, I'd do it slightly different.
Sure.
But actually, weirdly, there have been some cars that I've done where they'll list the spec, you go through it, you start building it, and you think, this really, I can't see this I can't see this gelling. And you get about halfway through and you think, oh my God.
Their vision's spot on.
Their vision is spot on.
Yeah.
And I think probably the most pivotal point for me in the project side was when we did the Beirut car, the Beirut RS. Very original car. It was found with the roof caved in.
So really, right.
And the guy brought it to us and said, look, I want to restore the car. And we've been through the whole brief. And he'd said to us, like, the closing comment was, okay, so just so we're clear, I want the full restoration, mechanical, want it to, function properly. There is one stipulation I have. You don't change the appearance of anything on the car.
Roof included? I mean, because if it's like this,
the roof is caved in.
Yeah.
I'm struggling. Like, what do you mean? He said, well, I don't want the suspension to change in terms of how it looks. I want it to still have some corrosion, but I want it to function the way it did when it left the factory.
Bloody hell, that's
like you want. There's quite a lot of work there.
Yeah.
And I kind of left that project meeting with, not sure we can deliver that, and I'm not sure that's the right thing to do. Fast forward like 3 or 4 months into the project, and we'd we'd dressed the roof out without cracking the paint.
Bloody hell.
But we still kept some light marks in there so you could see where it had been straightened. The car got a coating of like a satin lacquer, so it didn't look like it was fresh lacquer, and it kind of locked in what was there. And at that point, we were having people come in and they were going, oh wow, that's the Beirut car. And I suddenly thought, do you know what, if we painted this car and it was all fresh and brand new, it'd just be another 2.7 RS that's white with blue decals.
Amazing, but not that car, right?
And that car had a very unique story to tell, and it's still telling that story now.
Is it still circulating around?
Still circulating around.
Same guy owns it, or?
I think it's still the same guy that owns it.
Right.
We were up north on holiday, and I could see the front of a 911 approaching me at great speed. And it was the Beirut car.
Was it really?
And they used to use it.
That's
Use it all the time. But it was the fact that, like, that car's story was what had happened to it, and we hadn't erased that. It's still there. What we had done is put the enjoyment back into the car so that they could go and use it. And I remember talking to the owners, and they said, do you know what? Because it's got the odd mark on it, we are using it. We're taking it to events, you know, we're going to hill climbs and just doing stuff and having fun.
That's what it's about, right?
And that changed for me in terms of how we approach projects. It changed from that day forward. The preservation side was big. Like, it's very easy to take a headlining out of a car and go, well, let's throw that and put a new one in, because doesn't the new one look nice? But that may have taken 30 years to age, 40 years. You can't age.
You can't do that.
You can't age things. And there are processes where people airbrush to make things look old, but
if you're looking closely, and if you're starting from a blank sheet, you've got a piece of crap as a shell, and you're like, I want to make something that's got an old feel to it. All right, I'll buy that. But if you've got a historic car, that you then got all this lovely patina that's aged and it's taken decades to happen, but then you've got one part that someone's airbrushed, it stands out like a sore thumb.
Yeah, it does.
It stands out like a sore thumb.
It does.
So.
And it's such a, you know, there's a few projects. I mean, people say, like, what is the process for the restorations and projects you do? And the truth is, everyone is different. Everyone is different because they start in a different condition and they've got a different story. Some of the cars, you are buying parts and sort of fitting them to the car and going, because it's a fine line between keeping original bits in the car and doing that whole out with the old and in with the new. We're actually putting a car with a really nice coat of paint back together with old, worn out, tatty bits. So there's just a balance in there.
And I guess that balance is the crucial bit, the customer journey, and making sure that they understand what the boundaries are. Financial boundaries, taste boundaries, you know, educate them a little bit from your experiences, but also listening to what they want, because ultimately you're executing their vision. So not all, I can imagine there's been some over the years, some kind of difficult conversations to have where you're just so far apart. It's going to happen, right? It's so far apart in that journey that, you know, there needs to be a meeting of minds at some point.
Definitely, and I think what you say there about the customer being is part of the process and the journey, that's massive. For me, that's big, because they've got an idea of what they want, and sometimes it's been an idea that's been in their head since it was a poster car on the wall.
Absolutely.
So they spent like so much more time
20, 30, 40 years, right? And I mean, so I did a Porsche Cool podcast episode years ago, and that kind of question got asked to me, like, and it was that F40, 959, 930, so all red, you know, the black 80s black background, red car, super impact. I mean, crappy picture, but, and I'm not in that situation where I'm buying a 930 or anything, but at the same time, if I was, and I wanted a Guards red 930, you know, my vision would be very specific about what I wanted. So I could totally see a customer being like, no, I've got to live with this thing, right? So we've got to work this out.
And that's been such a huge thing, really, in a lot of the projects we've done. The projects that really come out to be unique at the end, for whatever reason, be it a totally fresh build or a patinated car, it's the ones that have had a good customer client interaction level. If they've got a good vision of what they want and you can execute it, and that's when you're using your knowledge. And sometimes it's taking you out your comfort zone. There are things that you would look at. Most of the projects we've done, just going out your comfort zone that little bit is actually quite good.
Yeah, yeah. Especially if it's, because I can't edit that bit out. Don't worry. It's a good time to check actually. Don't worry, I'm just going to check and make sure everything's still flashing. Cool, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah, so moving on a little bit then. So you guys, what did you move into this place?
I think we've been here 4 years now.
4 years, okay. Yeah, so it must have been the first year that you guys moved in that Boxengasse had a
yes,
oil
the
cooled
first
whatever it
year
was
we
thing.
moved in, Frank did the first oil cooled edition, and that was, and we did like a little track day as well on the side of that
Right, okay.
at Silverstone. It was just nice, it was nice to be here. For us, it was a big shift to get here.
Yeah.
I think for Frank, it was a big validation point of, but this vision I've got is actually it's starting to happen. It's not just it's not just an empty space. There's a heart in the building that's beating every day.
Yeah.
And I think opening the doors to oil cooled, it's really nice to kind of go, this is our home. This is
Had you
us.
done that before? Had you had anywhere where you'd had lots of customers or potential customers?
Yeah, we used to do quite a few open
around,
days
yeah.
at our last place. We used to do lots of open days with like the Porsche Club,
Sure.
Different regions, but it was just probably without being disrespectful to what was there, because it served us so well at the time.
Yeah, yeah.
It just probably wasn't a place that we were as proud of.
Yes.
So you'd always go, oh, it's a lovely place, but I'm sorry about this, or there was always a kind of an excuse where.
Yeah. Whereas this is perfect, right? Especially with you've got the fields locally, you can sort of expand out and use, and you can set this sort of courtyard. You can set stuff out as you want to display it. Like that sort. And I think you had 2 or 3 mid builds, and I want to get onto one specific car in a minute, but and that's what I walked into, and I was like, I had no expectations. I didn't know what I was walking into. I kind of seen some of the Instagram stuff, and then I walked in and I was like, oh God, I could literally set up a camp cot in the corner, and I, don't mind me, guys.
Yeah.
I would have been really happy.
But that's the nice thing, like, because we put a glass office box in, kind of to keep the guys that are processing and organising what happens within the business part of what is going on in the business.
That was an inspired move, because there's nothing more soul destroying than knowing everything's going on around you and you've got some plasterboard that it's horrible.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, it's lovely. From my office, I could see the Trinidad car kind of going together. This royal purple thing taking shape from a painted shell into, and that's what I have to look at every day. Which we get complacent. We're surrounded by all this fantastic.
That's a good point, actually. Do you get complacent? Is it?
Yeah, honestly, there
Really?
are days where customers will come in and go, "Wow, you've got some really amazing stuff."
Oh,
and
really?
I remember saying something to the effect of, "Oh yeah, I think we've only got 3 RSs here today," or something to that effect. And then you think, "Hang on a minute, we've got 3 2.7 RSs in today, and there's a 993 Turbo S and there's a 930 Turbo," and you start reeling off these cars, which are
special,
mega in their own right.
Oh, completely. And I find this with Festival of Speed or Revival. I get a sense of being overwhelmed. There's too much, right? I think they had. I'll pause for a sec. Yeah, I think they had a F40. An F40, F50, LAF. All these cars, right? And one of them on their own, I would have happily just sat around looking at all day. Same as the DLS. They had a DLS there. Loads of Tut Hill stuff. And any of those cars individually, I would have spent an hour perversely looking over every detail. But you get to the point where there's so much going on that you just, for me anyway, I get overwhelmed and I'm like, oh great, look at that F40. What's next? Yeah. And that's, I guess, is an element of that same thing, right? You just see a lot of it.
Yeah, because we see a lot of different cars in. I mean, it's the nice thing, I can walk in and I can see a 928, a 924, all the way up to the really halo expensive cars. But that's kind of weirdly, about a year ago, I started to drive in the morning and take stock of what was here.
That's cool.
Actually just look and think, such a breadth of models and generations of cars because of the different skill levels we've got with the staff that we've been here and their training background. You know, we've got a guy that's great on 928s and 944s, and you know, as much through the years as they've maybe not seen as much love, because people do solely focus, like it's the 911.
Die hard 911s.
It's like 911.
Yeah.
So it's nice to see them get a bit of appreciation, and
I think that's happening now.
oh man, yeah, you're seeing a lot of it
Even
now.
914s are starting to pick up a little bit of love, and you know, especially 914
But
6s.
there is some uber cool stuff
There
out
is,
there that's you know, that hasn't been cannibalised too much. So yeah, it's cool to see. It's cool to see. But again, it's back to that. It's interesting because it's nice to do different things. It's nice to be working on different models. Just be challenged again.
Yeah. When was the last time you picked up a 10 mil?
Weirdly, I've actually started to get a bit more back on the tools. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So, well, again, it's a small community. You know, you mentioned Tuttles and like BS Motorsport, Bainbridge. You know, we all know each other, and it's services that you tap into with each other. So I was actually dynoing an engine last week. So it's really important. I just, you know, I love doing that. I like getting involved. It is harder sometimes because there are bigger things that you need to be doing, but yeah.
When you get the opportunity to.
Yeah, I'm back involved again, so it's good.
That you mentioned the Trinidad car, and I think it's this car, right, that was here at Oil Cool at the time. It was mid-build, and I'm sure it's long gone now. Is that the one that was a drug mule car? And was that, or was that a different car that? And it had like weird little compartments in places where somebody had stashed stuff.
Yeah, there's lots of kind of stories floating around of it, but it was the car that came from Trinidad. I think it was the only car that it obviously got imported there, but not many cars get exported. So I think it was one of the only cars that got exported back out. It went to America, and that's where Josh picked it up, our founder. And then it came back here, and it was such a cool car and story that rather than it just be restored by us, it needed an owner to like buy the car and the project and be part of that journey, because that was the special bit. And thankfully we had just this perfect owner. He's been fantastic. It's been a lovely project to kind of go through and finding. There's been weird stories in that. Like, we found a guy up north that had the original service book. He bought a service pack on eBay.
Whoa!
Because obviously they wanted the binder. In there was the bit that most people would probably throw away. It was a service book for a particular car that was no use to anyone else.
Bloody hell!
And he kept it.
How did you find that guy? Was it through?
It came through a social media post that had gone out on the car. And it just so happened that there was some details shared of the car, and this guy got in contact, and we hooked the owner up with the guy.
That's amazing.
And there was another weird bit, like the original aluminium engine lid for that car. We traced it back, and we saw it was for sale probably about 10 years ago. So we don't know where it ended up, but we do know that a royal purple flat engine lid in aluminium was for sale, and it was not many of those. So yeah, there's just some cool things you kind of pick up along the way, and it's bringing different people in. Like, that car's we've had the original owner that exported it out here. He's seen the car. His son's come over and seen the car, and it's just kind of nice for people to see.
Yeah. Was there any kind of, how much do you want for it? I'll buy it back, or anything like that? Was
it? No.
Just curiosity. Just wanted to sort of.
Curiosity. Wanted to see the car. Excuse me. I think the car had changed massively. Like, when we took ownership of the car, it got BBS wheels, a big whale tail on the back. It got generation. Inside the car was what you'd expect in like a Capri, you know, your old school Recaros. Graphic equaliser.
Probably, literally out of a Capri.
It was, so we've kept all that stuff.
Have you? Right.
Yeah, we've got all that stuff with the car. But it did need, from a cosmetic perspective, you needed quite a few bits. But it was a great process in like blasting and cleaning back the shell and finding the original sealer and the royal purple and the original.
Were you able to keep any of the original metal work it was not usable in the car, but actually it's got the original paint, so you could then scan that paint to get it nailed on?
We did a series of videos on the car, so in those videos you can kind of see how the project took shape. And in those videos you'll see the rear parcel shelf get lifted out, where there's probably one area of the car that never gets touched, and there's a good coating of paint. So that's where we found the royal purple in its nicest form. So we were able to colour match from that. We we also found things like the original paint code plate that had been painted over like 4 or 5 times.
Of course, yeah.
And so we've kept that. So there was lots of really cool stuff you were kind of stumbling along.
So what have you got?
But the video does show you, because the shell, there was so much corrosion here and there in the car, and there was so much paint, overpaint and poor preparation that it just had to go back to a bare metal shell. So it was bare metalled. It was then etch primed, which was almost like a light creamy colour. So you could see that when the car was blasted, anything in cream was the original metal.
Gotcha.
Anything that we put in that was a black colour was a new part purchased.
Right.
And anything that was in bare sheet steel was hand manufactured. So where we would normally put floor pans into a car, because we were really searching to keep as much of the car original, and the owner was like, I'd rather it cost slightly more to keep more originality.
Yeah, yeah.
So we weren't putting floor pans in. We actually made small sections of the floor, hand pressed the bits out, and let those in. So in one of the videos, you'll see the car with the 3 different colours, and you can just see in that picture what's original and what's not.
Yeah, I'll link in the description all the series of videos for this as well. I'm going to go and have a rewatch of those. So
they're cool. And then, so it's at the moment, it's now finished. It's got to have its shakedown, so it's in, because obviously the weather on the roads, it's in storage at the moment, and then we'll get the shakedown phase finished, and there'll be a final video to come of like the finished product. But yeah, it's been a journey, right? It's been a journey. Yeah, definitely been a journey. And, you know, the owner's been on a massive journey with it as well.
Very cool. What have you got going on at the moment that is sort of, is there anything you got going on at the moment that you're like, you personally love and you can't wait to see it? It's kind of in its early stages, always whatever stage it's in, but you've got that kind of, I've got an emotional connection to this build, I really love it. Is there anything
I mean, there's a couple of projects I can't talk about at the moment.
Fair enough.
Which I'm really excited for. But there's a project I've got in the background. I bought a 930 a few years ago to have a bit of fun, and as ever, we're so OCD about things.
Yeah.
We start taking it on a path. So I bought this car, but I've ended up stripping it to a bare shell, and I'm now starting to take that in the background on this journey. So I'm quite excited to kind of have me as the only limitation in the project. So that's a car that I'm going to build, and it might not be for everyone, but it's just going to be what I want to create.
Is it going to be sort of resto modded, outlawed, or is it going to be? Is it going
to
be
a little bit of all sorts in there? It's already partially modified, so I'm not, as much as I'm big on originality and keeping things as they were made at Porsche.
Yeah.
This has already strayed down the road of kind of no return. So I've kind of got free reign with it.
Nice.
So it's going to be a little bit of, you know, a little bit of original 930 in there, a little bit of resto modding.
Yeah.
But it's going to be essentially what I want to see. It's going to be what I want to go in. Like if there's 20 sets of keys on the board, this is the set of keys that I take.
Okay. And where's that in terms of process at the moment?
So it's fully, it's at the stage where it needs to have metal. Okay. So it needs to have metal work done. And then I think the most exciting bit for me is the mock-up, the dry build. It's like, it's putting all the panels on, it's working out where the bits that I'm going to be veering off-piste on, and doing all the hard working out where they're going, and you know, modifying panel work. Because again, I want all this stuff to look like, you know, you open the front boot, you look in there, and everything that you see, it looks like it's always been there.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I don't like this kind of cable tie retrofit stuff that kind of sticks in, and then you look and think
it just doesn't.
Yeah.
Again, aesthetically, it doesn't work. I get why people do it, and if I think back to some of the cars I kind of have modified over the years, there's some car crash stuff in there. Blue Samco hoses, they now make my neck itch. I never want to see a blue Samco hose again. And I just, but you know what? At different times of your life, you kind of.
It is different times, and do you know what? Most people say you learn by your mistakes.
Of course,
and I think you have to go through those processes. I think, and that's why in the industry we're in, we're not here to tell people what to do. We're here to guide them through and steer them away from probably the mistakes that we made 20, 30 years ago. You know, when I started doing my apprenticeship with Josh, he was already guiding me away from the mistakes
some of the
that they
stuff.
made early
and
on.
That would have been, like you saying, that's like 98, kind of that. And there was a lot, I mean, Fast and Furious was it was ramping into the full neon body kit crap everywhere. And you could have easily, is it. You could have had 6x9s cut out of a perfect shelf and stuff back in the day. So, credit to Josh for just gently pulling you away from all that crap.
He's always been kind of big on doing things. His kind of drive has been not necessarily the cosmetic side, more of the engineering. Like if you close your eyes, does it feel good? Does it sound good? Does it do what it's supposed to do? And that's actually been quite important to me. Because at various points, we build cars that look aesthetically pleasing. You look at nice panel gaps and all the details are there. But if you drive it and it's, the suspension is not working with the brakes because you've gone with something that's aftermarket and they're not quite interfaced properly, it's heavily braked, but it's really soft on the suspension.
It's pitching and diving all over the place.
You can buy all of these things online from different people, but actually Porsche spent so much money R&D in every one of their cars to make them work. But if you go,
you've got to go some right.
You
to kind
have
of
to work hard
that.
when you modify.
And I'm even making that mistake, I think, now. So my 981 Cayman, the idea with that is they didn't make a 981T. So I'm kind of, because it's a base car, but I bought the Sport Design body kit. I imported some door cars of GT4 from Australia. The accent colour's green, so I've the straps are now the exact right colour, exact right material. So I'm kind of trying to do the same thing. I'm cherry picking bits from different versions of the cars. There's other stuff I'm going to get for 718s, and I kind of want to build a kind of a 981T, but amped up a little bit. But it's still the same thing, right? It still has to feel like a factory car. And I did a whole thing with Barnsport about geometry and suspension design, and I'm going to try and get attractive as well and speak to those guys because they know a ton about that stuff. So, but it's a real balance, right? To try and get that right, not stiff enough, too stiff. Don't want to put huge, great anti-roll bars on it, and then it's even tyre size, right? Compound of the tyre, all those choices make a huge difference. So, I'm trying to be sensitive to that, but still kind of have my own ideas of what I want to achieve with it. So,
and that's the thing. I think it's a car that you've bought, and it's been made by somebody, and it's now you've driven it, you've used it, and you've gone. I like that. I'm not too keen on those aspects. And if you can change and dial those bits out, it makes it a fantastic. It's such a unique thing.
Totally.
Like it's something you've created that works for you. It might not work for everybody.
Yeah, no, totally. I even said, so Frank and I got into this, and I said that, and I stand by it. And even with the 550 build, I spoke to you about when I came over last time.
Which I'm super excited about.
Yeah, I know, me too. And I had some good news the other day about that as well. So I'm buzzing off it. But I'll talk to you about it off camera. But I decided, even with the 981, if I do something and it's visually, it just doesn't work, I'll go back and redo it. And and same mechanically, if I do something and it just doesn't, and I think the suspension's got to come off, and I'll redo that because I'm just not happy with the choices I made at the time. But I think if you have that in your mind, that you're not kind of, just because you've spent money on something, if it doesn't serve the car and actually is a worse, you've degraded the quality in some way, just go back and redo it. It's an expensive mistake for sure, but that's engineering, right? You make those mistakes, you try something, it doesn't work, then you go back and re-engineer it, come up with a better way of doing it, and then at some point in the future, you get that Goldilocks moment where it's just right,
Yeah. And that's, we did a project, we did a 997 for a guy who had owned the car from you, and so he knew every inch of the car. I mean, you could take 3 997s and they all just drive and do things slightly different, even straight from the factory. They've all kind of got their own little personalities. And I think when you drive a car every day, you know how it turns in.
Yeah.
And if something changes, you hone in straight on that, or a noise, or a creak, or a rattle.
Absolutely.
So he knew every inch of this car, and he wanted to go on a journey and do a project on it, as opposed to buying another new car.
Yeah.
Actually, we sat down together and I said, look, it's really important that we get this right, because you know everything about the car. It's not a car you just bought, it's a car that you know everything about, so you know the bits you don't like. So we went on this journey, and it's had lots of cosmetic changes, it's had lots of trim changes inside, and then we ventured into mechanicals, and it's been stunning to kind of watch the car take shape.
Yeah.
And sitting in the passenger seat. Him and I went out for some lunch and drove up the road, and we just went over a couple of little roundabouts. And he's got this little deep dish steering wheel on it. It's not a race car; it's a road car, but he just likes it to be closer to him. And I'm a fan of a little deep dish.
Yeah.
And I just sort of sat there, and I kind of glanced across, and he's tucked it in across the roundabout. You can see it, like he tucks it in over, and this cheeky little grin's appeared. And you think, that's it.
That's it. That's the
bit that we all.
Yeah, it's
like
so stupid, isn't it? The amount of money you spend to achieve that cheeky little grin, but that's the moment where you forget all the crap that's going on in your life, the age you are, the creaks and stuff of you, everything else goes, and for that kind of period of time, the only thing that matters is the satisfaction you're getting out of that car, right? And that is where that's where the value goes in, is to achieve that, right?
Yeah.
I think anyway.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that the engineering side of what Porsche create is phenomenal, you know, and just like fine tune and tweak it to each person's different taste it's nice, it's special.
And it's interesting and nice to hear actually that you have spent that much time and dedication to achieving something on a newer car, right? Because so far we've talked about air-cooled, and you know, and that runs out in the mid-90s. So to know that you're kind of still doing that stuff with modern cars, right?
Yeah.
And there's still scope to personalise at that level as well. So
yeah, I mean, look, we love doing projects. We love doing special stuff. It's not just projects we do servicing and you know, it's nice that a service customer can come in with their 996, with their 997, with their early 3.2 Carrera, and while they're having their routine annual stuff done and they're looking at their preventative maintenance for next year, they're kind of glancing over the corner going, wow, that's cool. And actually, sometimes they get little ideas. They'll come in and they go, I quite like that steering wheel actually, or you know, I like what you've done with the rear seat delete in that car, or whatever it is that's going on. So it's nice that it feels like they can take some inspiration from other people's projects and ideas that are going on.
Yeah, very cool. So what is next for Autofarm then? Have you guys got a kind of grand plan, or is it just, you know what, you got some great projects coming, that's what you do, and you got, you know, obviously the bread and butter service and maintenance work?
Yeah, the bread and butter service and maintenance stuff is nice because it's the stuff you learn. I mean, you're using, you know, we've got all the new P-Wiz stuff, so you're constantly learning all the new electronics on the newer cars and stuff. So that's great. But look, we do what we always do, and that's, you know, we'll work on anything that's got the Porsche crest on it. Yeah. But we have to give it the full passion, and sometimes that can be a bit intense. Like, you know, we're all a bit. We love what we do. We're not doing it because it's just a job. Yeah. Like everyone that's here.
That's does it. I would say, I'm on 20-something, 26th, I think, of these now. And I don't think there's a single person I've spoken to that stayed in the industry or stayed doing this kind of work. Everyone's got that same, like, I have my good days and bad days, but this never gets old, right? Even if you're used to it, there's something in it that is, There's a special sauce in Porsche, and I don't know what it is, but it keeps people attached to it for sure.
Yeah, it is, and I think the 997 we did more recently, I got talking to the owner about it, and he kind of described it like a tailor-made suit. And it hadn't really thought of it like that until that point. You know, there wasn't anything that we said, oh, you know, we're endorsed by that suspension manufacturer, therefore I'm gonna steer you into that because that's what we sell. It was more of a case of like, what does he really want? What do we want to be proud of building? So I just the unique side of it, where no two cars that you build are the same. You know, it's not a car that's built and you get to choose the colour and a bit of the trim. You know, it's you know,
it's off menu. It
is. And if the budget is there, as you know, you can design and make absolutely anything.
I want to pick up more on the on your car as well, though. So maybe if we start on that.
Yeah, I mean that's still it. Still a lot of ideas on that at the moment. So I'm still probably at the storyboard stage of.
Right. Okay.
I'm going to get the main focus for me at the moment is to get the shell solid, jigged. I want to make sure it's straight and everything's good. And then once I've got to that stage, for me, the heart of the car being straight, solid, is the most important thing. And if I have to spend more doing that, I may sacrifice a bit of the spec.
Okay.
For the spec to
get
come
that
later.
Right. Okay.
So
you got a timeline for when you, or is it just like it gets done?
It's rolled on quite a bit actually. Yeah. So it's been dormant for a year while we've been focused on some other projects. And yeah, my business partner Steve's given me the kind of kickstart to kind of get it rolling again.
Oh, that's good.
Because also, really, it's kind of it's a showcase of what we can do as well.
100%. When you were talking about it, I was thinking this is a perfect opportunity. You can kind of it's your vision, right?
Yeah.
So you can take everything you've learned, everything that you've made a mistake on, every kind of design choice that you've kind of disagreed with or that you've wanted to do ever, and you can package it up in this one thing, right? I'm super excited about it.
The gas mark is turned up then, isn't it?
Yeah, massively.
Like
yeah. Yeah, totally. But at the same time, you can guarantee that the detail and the finish will be. Mate, I'm not waiting for an invite. I'm coming back when you get that car in here, right?
Always welcome. I mean, like I said, I want to get it moved on to another stage because I think sometimes, be it a house project, a car project, you do sometimes get to a point where the momentum slows.
Yes.
And then you kind of lose a bit of, not necessarily the desire to do it, you just lose a bit of the energy to force it. Yeah. And then once you get the wheels turning again, you start getting that hunger for it, and then that's the bit again. So, yeah, I mean, our main
noise 928.
Yeah, our main focus was obviously that we had a massive takeover of Autofarm with Josh, keeping him in the background and not changing what was already, Autofarm was already functioning. Yeah. What we wanted to do was like amplify and add to what was already a good thing. Yeah, we didn't want to come in and go.
Didn't want to be a different company, right?
Yeah, do you know
the essence of it's still really important.
What you've done all those years, we're going to throw that away.
And Jon was saying he comes in from time to time, he's mooching around.
Oh, it's brilliant.
It's like Jay Leno, looks exactly the same as he did 25 years ago. And
it's just, I mean, I've worked with Josh for a long time. He's cut me a lot of slack when I was younger. I probably didn't appreciate how much of a pain in the backside I probably was in the early days. Equally, I've probably done a little bit of reciprocation through that changeover. I'm the guy he took on as an apprentice and probably wanted to hang me a few times, and then role reversal where he's been employed by us. So there was a little bit of mutual respect.
It's fine, don't worry. I can edit that anyway, it's fine.
There's a little bit of mutual respect going on there, and then to be at a stage where, when we took over, I remember him saying, just don't hold the business back,
really
move it forward.
That's good of him, because you can understand that you would forgive somebody for, if it's their life, their brand, their reputation, people know him attached to the company, that you would be a little bit cautious about handing that off to somebody else, even if someone you trust, right? You're still going to have that like, oh, please don't ruin this. It's my legacy as well, right? It's attached to that. So the fact that he was like,
I mean, it was always a hard thing to do, to take over. But I think the biggest thing for me was not undoing the goodness that was already done, and then when you shake someone's hand, it's your bond, it's your word. I will take this forward. Steve and I, as a say couple, like a business husband and wife, we'll do this and move it on. And to see him come back into the business and still enjoy coming in to see it and not think, you know what, that's not the place I want to go. It's nice actually feeling. Like having my granddad come in and sit and chew the fat and talk about, and I still get stories out of him now that I just I hear things and I think, I've been here, it's been 25 years I've done this with you, and how did I not know about that? So it's cool.
That's mega. It feels like that's a natural kind of stopping point. So, and I want to come back. I do genuinely want to come back and see, when you're kind of coming to the end of a project and it's here and we can kind of do a bit of a tour around. But I'd love to come back, and especially the 9:30. I can't wait for that. But for now, though, Mikey, thank you so much. And guys, I hope you really enjoyed that. It's definitely up there in my top 5 most favourite episodes so far. So we'll be back at Autofarm at some point in the future. But for now, thank you, Mikey, so much.
Thanks for listening to my drone.
Take it easy.
Ace, take care.
Bye for now, guys.